given day. I'm gonna go button crazy. Okay, here we go. All right. So watch the recording, Miss Jenna. I'm glad that you're here though and listening. Okay, so back to this. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, so these are some things I'd like you to add to your notes. So wheat, if you could maybe put in parentheses or off to the side that wheat is the most popular grain in the United States, and it's used to make flour, breakfast cereals, and pasta. So wheat is the most popular grain in the US, and it's used to make flour, breakfast cereals, and pasta. And I wouldn't be telling you that if I didn't think it was a test question, okay? Which is why I'm adding it in a little bit to our notes. So wheat is the most popular grain in the US, and it's used to make flour, breakfast cereal, and pasta. And then corn is the second most popular grain in the United States. It's typically used as a vegetable, but also made into breakfast cereals like grits. Grits are kind of popular in the South, not as big up here in the North. So corn is the second most popular grain in the US, used primarily as a vegetable, but also made into breakfast cereals and grits. And then rice is the most common in many parts of the world, including the Orient and India. So rice is the most common in many parts of the world, including the Orient and India. And then if you could just add this up by the definition of grain, where it talks about the single hard seed, that grain is a good staple food because it has good keep quality. It doesn't cost very much, and it's a high energy food. We're just talking about carbohydrates and nutrition and how carbs give you energy. I don't know if you remember that from last year, but you know, the two classes that's kind of why you have to take nutrition first and then take culinary, so that they build on each other. And when I talk about different things that relate to the nutrition side of it, you already have like a prerequisite in your head of what we've talked about prior. And that's kind of why I like you to take nutrition first. Okay, so this is the what the wheat looks like. And if you notice on your notes, I believe I wanted you to insert a picture there. So if you see, it says draw and label a diagram of the kernel of wheat. So you have, on the outside, you have the kernel and the bran. And then on the inside, at the top part of the grain, you're going to have endosperm. And then at the bottom, that's where you have your germ, and that's where all your B vitamins, protein, minerals, and healthy fats are, is down there at the bottom. The endosperm is kind of where all the starch is stored, and it's the largest amount of flour that comes from that. And then when it talks about the bran, that's the outer skin that protects the core from sunlight and pests. And that has antioxidants, B vitamins, and fiber in it. So the really important pieces, the bran and the germ, a lot of times those get removed, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But if everything is intact, that's when you're going to hear things like whole, because it's the whole grain that's left behind, and that's where really a lot of the nutrition comes from. But if they strip it of the bran and the germ, and they only leave the endosperm, um, it doesn't have as good of nutrients than it would if it was a whole grain. Okay. So if you guys could just like, get an image and put it in there for yourself. So when you're studying, you can look at that and know what the different parts are, because that's going to help you understand some things as we move through the slideshow. Okay, so I want to show this video to you, but again, I have to exit out and I have to switch off into another platform here, so hang tight. Okay, whoops, I think I just did that wrong. No. Okay, I think I have it, maybe. No guarantees. Oh, whoopsie. Okay, so I think this will work. Cross your fingers, people. All right, so you should be able to hear it and see it. I'm gonna, oh my gosh, did I just X myself out? I'm gonna kill this thing. Oh my God. I don't know what's happened. This is just my life. Oh my gosh. Am I in here twice?
Yes, we can see you in the video on one and you're talking in the other. One's muted with camera, the other one's unmuted without camera. Okay, now we see you, but we can't hear you. Now we can hear
I
you.
do not have any idea what just happened there.
It's 6th hour, remember? You said that yesterday. By 6th hour, you fall apart.
I'm starting to melt down. I think it's my problem. Oh my Lord in heavens. Okay. I'm going to try this and I'm going to hope and pray that it works. All right. Let me try this one more time. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to turn off my mic and my camera so it actually, you can hear it play through. So I'm going to go away, but hopefully not too far.
Okay.
Whole grains. Everyone's talking about whole grains. The U.S. 2010 Dietary Guidelines recommend that Americans eat at least half their grain intake as whole grains. This means everyone age 9 and up should eat 3 to 5 servings or more of whole grains every day out of the recommended 6 daily grain servings. So what is a whole grain? A whole grain contains all 3 parts of a kernel: the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. The bran is the outside coat of the kernel, and it contains B vitamins and fiber. The germ is the embryo which, if fertilized, will sprout to make a new plant. It contains B vitamins, protein, and healthful fats. The endosperm is the germ's food supply and is mainly starchy carbohydrates and some proteins. Most grains that are milled, such as wheat, have the germ and bran removed, which also removes many of the grain's nutrients. The remaining endosperm is used to make flour. Some examples of whole grain include whole wheat, corn, brown rice, wild rice, farro, oats, barley, quinoa, sorghum, spelt, rye, bulgur, millet, and popcorn. Whole grains can be whole, cracked, ground, rolled, or flaked kernels, but the mix of endosperm, germ, and bran must match that of the intact grain. Whole grains are important because they supply B vitamins, protein, fiber, magnesium, iron, phosphorus, and vitamin E. The fiber in whole grains is mostly insoluble, and it is important for maintaining regular digestive flow. Current scientific evidence also shows that whole grains play an important role in lowering the risk of stroke, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and some digestive system cancers. They also help with weight control. It is important to note that fiber varies from grain to grain. For example, brown rice has 3.5% fiber, while barley and bulgur have over 15%. Both fiber and whole grains have been shown to have health benefits, but they are not interchangeable. Check the nutrition facts label to find out whether a product is made from whole grain and how much fiber it contains. Whole grain foods may contain different amounts of whole grain ingredients, but they all can count towards getting the recommended number of whole grain servings each day. Whether a food counts as a grain serving can usually be determined by using 1 ounce equivalents. For example, a slice of bread or 1 cup of ready-to-eat breakfast cereal usually weighs an ounce. A 1 ounce equivalent grain product will contain at least 16 grams of a grain, plus 12 grams of other ingredients such as the water and sugar in bread. So you might get 3 servings of whole grain by eating 3 1 ounce equivalents of whole grain food labeled as 100% whole grain, or by choosing 6 1 ounce equivalents made with a mix of whole and refined grains. The United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, defines a grain serving as a grain product containing at least 16 grams of flour. To be a whole grain serving, the product you eat has to have at least 16 grams of whole grain. The dietary guidelines recommend that at least 3 of Americans' daily 6-grain servings be whole grain. 3 servings of whole grain food daily adds up to 48 grams of whole grain. So just how do you find whole grain products in the supermarket? It's not easy. Current food labeling can make it difficult to find the whole grain in a food product. Whole grain does not appear on the nutrition facts panel, and the ingredient list may not clearly indicate the amount of whole grain present in a food. Luckily, there are tools you can use to help you choose whole grains at the supermarket. First, look at the ingredient label. If the first ingredient says whole before a type of grain, for example, whole wheat flour, whole oats, or whole rye, then the product is more likely to be a whole grain product. However, this is not guaranteed. If the whole grain appears farther down the list, the more likely it is that the product does not have enough whole grain to make the USDA serving. You can also look for the whole grain stamp on the package. This stamp makes it easy to find products with whole grains. The 100% whole grain stamp lets you know that a food contains a full serving of 16 grams or more of whole grains in each labeled serving, and that all of the grain is whole grain. There is also a basic whole grain stamp that signifies that a product contains at least 8 grams, or half a serving, of whole grain per labeled serving, but may also contain some refined grain. You may find food companies stating the amount of whole grains in a serving of their product or using a whole grain symbol to illustrate foods with whole grains. This will be on the front or top of boxes where you can see it as you shop. This is becoming more common on cereal packages. Just be sure to also check the ingredient label. Now it's time to examine your food choices. Our most common sources of whole grain are breads, cereals, and crackers. Take a look at the packages in your pantry. How many would qualify as whole grains? If not many, try to replace some of those refined grains with whole grains. Try substituting white rice or pasta with brown rice, wild rice, or whole wheat pasta. You can also experiment with ancient grains that are making a comeback, including quinoa, farro, bulgur, millet, spelt, and sorghum. Many people choose these ancient grains because they are nutrient-rich and high in protein and fiber. Some are chosen as gluten-free alternatives to traditional grains, and many are less processed or modified. Here are a few ideas to get you started. Quinoa is a great source of protein. It has a nutty, smoky flavor and can be used just like rice. It can be served hot or cold. Farro is the oldest cultivated grain in the world. It has a chewy, firm texture and can be used in soups and salads. Bulgur is very high in fiber and low in fat. It is commonly used in cold salads and stir-fry dishes. Spelt has a sweet nutty flavor which is similar to barley. It is found in whole berries or ground into flour. Spelt is commonly used for baking and can also be cooked and substituted for rice and pasta in many dishes. Millet is originally from China and North Africa, and it has a mild corn-like flavor. It is rich in magnesium. It can be used in salads and stir-fry or warmed with milk for breakfast. Sorghum is gluten-free and has a chewy texture. It can be served hot or cold and can replace noodles in soups and stews. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try making risottos, pilafs, and other rice-like dishes with whole grains such as barley, bulgur, millet, quinoa, or sorghum for added nutrition and taste. As you try different whole grains, you will find that they are delicious as well as healthy.
Get back in here and we'll continue on with our Google slide. Alrighty. So on your notes, you should be ready to write in what's a whole grain. So we'll start there. Okay. So be working on your notes, please, as we go through. So whole grain, made from the entire kernel, including the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. And there's a picture there to kind of show you that. And an actual picture of a grain so that you can look at it. Look at the wheat there. Then you have your refined grains, which are milled. So the germ and the bran are removed. So that's refined. And then you have enriched, which is adding nutrients lost during the process of the grain back into the finished product. So in the processing, they lost some nutrients, and then they're going to go ahead and add it back in. So they'll do that with white flour. All right, and then I need to know when you're ready to move on from that slide. I can get somebody to give me a hand blurb that you're ready. Now in class, in person, I went out and bought a bunch of the grains that we're going to talk about, and I showed them and passed them around in class. So unfortunately, you guys won't be able to see that. But if one of them piques your interest or you're curious of ones that you've not heard before, you can always look them up. Good, but you just can't. Gracious. All right, well, I'm going to assume you're ready, and if not, there's a recording. So that's going to be in your best interest to maybe just go back and fast forward to the parts that you need. So why do whole grains matter? Diets rich in whole grain foods and other plant foods and low in saturated fat and cholesterol may help reduce the risk of heart disease. And remember, that's the #1 killer in the United States. So whole grains do matter, and they're rich with nutrients, and they're going to help fight one of the leading causes of death, okay, which is very important. Consuming at least 3 or more ounces equivalent of whole grain per day can reduce the risk of several chronic diseases and may also help with weight maintenance. So remember, they want you to make half of your grains whole grains. So, and you're supposed to have 6, so half of 6 would be 3. So see how that kind of connects there? And then here's just some examples also of what they have. High fiber, they're high in B vitamins, they're low in fat, they have rich sources of minerals, more calcium. So they're really good for us. So the red, the blue, and the more calcium, that's what needs to be put in your notes. Brady, were you in class when we did the first part of the notes, bud? Well, maybe you shut me down.
I know he was out Monday and Tuesday. And
Oh,
I think we started notes Monday because I started, I think, at the beginning, and of course I was out all week last week. So
well, he has them all done, so I'm just curious on like how that might have been, how that might be.
oh,
Oh, I think I might have sent them to him
okay.
actually. Okay, I'm gonna skip over our fiber video for now, and then we'll come back to that. All right, so we're gonna continue talking about wheat here. A common wheat is used for flour. And the durum wheat is a type of wheat with high protein and gluten content. Jordan, are you still with us?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure you're getting the notes down okay.
I am.
Okay, great. Okay, and then they're the durum is high in protein and gluten. I did that one, didn't I? Whoops. Semolina is an endosperm only of the durum wheat. And so an example of semolina too is couscous, which is kind of a granular form of semolina. And then you have bulgur, which they talked about on the video, which is cracked durum wheat that has been parboiled, dried, and then cracked. And then spelt, which is a type of wheat. And there's a picture there of spelt. That's what that picture is. Okay. All right, moving on to pasta. So pasta is usually made from durum wheat because of its high protein and gluten. Pasta test for doneness is called al dente. So usually that means that it's not super mushy, but it's not hard either. It's just kind of like like when you bite into it, it's spongy but not mushy and not like a snap. It's kind of firm to the tooth. So it's still holding its shape. So we call that al dente. Pasta doubles as it cooks. So if you're going to cook 1 cup, it's going to make 2. So like if you, if there's only 2 people in your home, you would make 1 cup and that would feed the both of you. Okay, 1 cup each. So to cook pasta, you want to boil a large pot of water. Add your pasta once it boils. Cook for 10 minutes. Drain it. And then toss with oil to prevent it from sticking together. You would rinse pasta if you're gonna like put it in a casserole or have it with a salad or something, but otherwise don't rinse it. Or if you want to stop the cooking process, then you could rinse it as well, because if it's still really hot, it'll still keep cooking past maybe the al dente point, so you got to be careful with that. All right, so I am going to pause here and we're going to talk about the demo. So I'm going to kind of switch gears on you guys. So let's go into the demo. And I'm going to talk to you about the demonstration, okay? All right, so hopefully you can still see my screen. I put your ingredients here. Equipment, just kind of think to yourself, what would you need? You need a bowl, a spatula, leveler. You would need a 1/3 cup measure, 1 cup measure, a teaspoon, 1/3 of a cup for equipment. And then I'm going to kind of explain what I did. So I'm going to kind of be a narrator. So instead of actually seeing the video, you're going to have to listen to my narration. So what you do when you make breakfast rolls is you're going to start with 2 cups of flour at first, and you're going to put them in your bowl. And then you're going to add a 1/3 cup of the sugar and a teaspoon of salt. And then the 2 packages of yeast. And I think the yield for that, if you were doing it with just like maybe loose yeast, would be 2 1/4 cups. So you would need, not cups, I'm sorry, 2 1/4 teaspoons. So you would need 4 1/2 teaspoons of yeast to make that. And then you're going to stir that up in your bowl. And then you're going to put 1 cup of milk either on the stove or in the microwave, and you're going to heat it up until it's warm. You don't want to scorch it. You don't want it boiling. You just want it warm. And once it's warm, you're then going to pour it over the 2 cups of flour, the 1/3 cup of sugar, the teaspoon of salt, and the 2 packages of dry yeast. And the reason you're using warm milk is because yeast needs a warm environment to grow. And so when you add the milk to the yeast mixture, it's going to allow that yeast to kind of grow. And that's what we want. All right. Once you add that, then you can add in your margarine, your 1 egg, and you stir it all up. And then you're going to gradually add the rest of the flour. So I put in a cup of flour and stirred it up. And then I just put a little bit in at a time. And I might have gotten to 4 cups eventually. But I then put it on the counter and I kneaded it for 5 minutes. Okay, so I just sat there and kneaded it for 5 minutes. I'm trying to work the air out of the dough. And after 5 minutes, I put it back into the bowl. and I set it aside and I let it rise. Okay. And I let it rise for about, 20, 30 minutes. And I was trying to see if it would double in size so that I could roll out the breakfast rolls on day 2. So on Friday, I'm going to go over day 2, and you'll have more ingredients and you'll have more direction. But for today, I just need you to get day 1 complete of the breakfast rolls. Okay. So you'll open up your demo page, you'll do the ingredients that are listed, you'll do the equipment we talked about, you'll replay in your head what I just said or play back this video because you have a narration. And then on Friday, I'll have a narration for day 2. I have pictures of day 2. So at the end of our day 2 on Friday, this is what the breakfast rolls look like when I left school. And for the in-person kids, I'm going to cook them up tomorrow and we're going to eat them. But for you guys, you'll just get to see the end product and how it looked. This is before they've been in the oven. Okay. So do you have questions for me on that? I'm sorry, it's just a dictation, and I hope to figure out what I'm doing that's not connecting with the camera. I don't know. I almost had Mrs. Gray just use my phone and record me that way because I'm just about ready to throw in the towel. But I will keep on trying to see if I can figure out what is causing it not to work. And hopefully you won't have to just listen to my voice from here on out. So anyway, so I'd like you to work on your demo page day 1 for the last 15 minutes. And if you didn't get your notes done, make sure that you watch the recording